Welcome to Lift Your Story podcast with guest Peter George, public speaking coach. Hi, everyone. I am Lorianne. I am that gal from Milton, Ontario, Canada, and I'm with.
I am that guy. I am Roy Miller from Dallas, Texas. Welcome to our Lift Your Story podcast.
In this episode, we welcome Peter George, and he is a public speaking coach. Thank you so much for being with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, Peter, public speaking is probably the number one fear for everybody. And I understand when you were a child, you had some issues.
Yeah, I did. When I was young, I had both a lisp and a stutter, still do. And if you listen closely, you might hear either one or both. And when you're young and growing up in the city, you do two things. You keep your mouth shut, you don't speak to people, and you become very proficient in sports, because if you're good in sports, you don't get picked on. So I played football, baseball, and hockey, so I was playing sports all year round. And growing up not communicating with people was difficult, especially when you want to communicate, especially when you're a kid and you want to fit in. And that's how I went through life. And I learned that if I talked about things I really enjoyed, like at that time, sports or music, I didn't stutter that much, if at all. But if I talked about school or things that meant something to me, like my parents or whatever it might be, my dog, I would stutter. So I picked and choose how I communicated with people. Unfortunately, when you get older, you find out you can't go through life that way. Not effectively, anyway.
Very
So, yeah. So you went all the way through school that way?
Yeah.
Wow.
Very much so. And when I got out of school, I went to work for a major corporation, one of the world's best known corporations. And one of my responsibilities was to present. And they said, you need to present. And I said, I don't do that. And then it became, okay, then why do we have you here? So what happened was I went for help. Well, actually, first I tried on my own. I read books, which was really what you had at the time. And I tried and tried. The problem with reading from books are great, but you don't get feedback. And you don't know if you're doing things right, and you don't progress real quickly. You progress as quickly as you can comprehend and practice from that book. So I eventually went and got help in group and then by myself, one-on-one coaching. And that made a world of difference there. And then when I left the corporation and went out to start my own companies, it made a difference there as well. I found out the better I could present to others, the faster my companies grew.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
You're the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're the face of the company.
Exactly. And once I started speaking, more and more people asked me to speak at different types of occasions. And that was great, because the more exposure I got, just like you said, Roy, I was the company, basically. The more exposure I got, the more exposure the company got, the more sales we made, greater revenue, higher profit margin, all those things. That's a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
So I just have to quickly bring this up. My father was in a big corporation. He had to do the same thing. And my father's nickname, though, he could communicate, and his nickname was Gabby in university. Now, speaking of communication, then he had 3 strokes when he was 83, and now he has aphasia and he cannot communicate. And I think for the first time in his life, he realized just the value of our being able to speak. I mean, you already knew that, having gone through your struggles, and he's realizing it today. He's taken great steps, and he can communicate that we can understand him. But I'm just saying is that people underestimate their value of being able to speak, but you valued it, and you even took steps to be able to do that and overcome, your the stuttering and the fear of speaking and communicating.
Yeah, and I don't know, and being honest, I don't know that if I wasn't pressured into it, if anything would have changed, which would have been unfortunate. I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have enjoyed the success that I have. Things would have been incredibly different than they are. And that's truthfully why I help people in what I do. I spoke for 15 years, quite often, 7 countries, every state in this country, numerous times, at least the 48 contiguous states. And when I left that, because that's, as you get older, that's a lot of work. When I left that, I had to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And my wife said, well, you've been helping people right along become more effective speakers, whether it was other speakers I got to know who wanted to know how I did things or vice versa. You've been helping people and you love that. Why don't you just do that? And that's literally how I got into helping other people. But not only do I love doing that, I love it because every one of us should have the ability to communicate well with others because it's life-changing. And when they can accomplish that, they see things in other parts of their lives come about that they might never have imagined. And though I teach public speaking, what I say my clients get out of it, the greatest benefit they get, yeah, they get to communicate more effectively, but the greatest benefit is confidence. And I don't care what level they're at. I don't care if they're a young person right out of school. I don't care if they're a 55-year-old president of a multinational company. And I have someone in mind when I'm saying that, who has said, confidence is the greatest thing I got out of this. And that permeates various aspects of their lives.
I mean, you lived it, right?
I did.
I mean, you're
Still do.
speaking
Yeah.
from-
Yeah.
You're speaking from experience. I mean, you saw the benefit to yourself, how it changed your life.
You know, and that's exactly what happened, Roy. And what I'll ever tell everybody is because I didn't communicate when I was young, I didn't develop a large vocabulary and I didn't do a lot of things that other people might have done. And you don't have to do that. When people say, keep it simple, stupid, well, that's the spot where I live. I don't have to move there. I'm there. I'm very matter of fact when I speak. I'm not very sophisticated in my creation of a presentation. I follow a formula for the most part, and that's what I teach about developing a presentation. But when I present, it's just like you're using here. And it might have been defensive because if I try to say a 5-syllable word, my stutter comes out like you wouldn't believe. And that happens every once in a while when your brain plays games on you when you're speaking and your adrenaline's flowing and all, is that I'll use a word I have never used in my life, or at least I attempt to. For whatever reason, it starts to come out of my mouth and I just stutter and stutter and stutter over it. And the funniest thing about it is it becomes a joke because at that point, it's like Porky Pig at the end of the cartoon where that's all, folks. He changed. I do the same thing. I'll just then simplify it and everybody laughs and I have fun laughing at myself. But all that being said, that way of keeping it simple, a lot of people think, well, if I get up in front of other people, whether it's on stage or in a conference room or wherever it might be, community event, that I have to sound brilliant. Mm-hmm. And you really don't. You really don't. Even if you think of Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream, there was nothing complicated about it. It was eloquently put together, but there was nothing complicated about the words. They were simple words with simple meanings that anybody could grasp without really thinking about it. And that's what we want to do.
Well, yeah, because I think about it and you think, well, okay, I got to really have these nice words that, will impress people. And instead of just being yourself, like you say, matter of fact, just say it. It's kind of like they always say, pretend I'm a third grader and tell me. They used to be saying for us at work, it's complicated stuff. Okay, stop right there, back up. Now pretend I'm in the third grade and tell me again, because we have a lot of technical stuff.
Exactly. And it isn't that brilliance. When you can take something that's technical and simplify it, that is pure brilliance. And that's difficult to do, which is why a lot of us who have to convey technical things don't. Well, we don't do it simply. We keep it as technical as can be because it takes work to simplify it.
Yeah.
But when you can, and that's beautiful.
You can be given a presentation. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Bob, who can tell you the technical part.
Exactly.
It's funny because I did know somebody, and even just in dinners when we would be speaking, he was very close to me. Let's put it that way. And they would say, I don't understand him. I don't understand his words, because he felt that there was some sort of presence and power in words. I can understand if you're putting it in a book that somebody's going to read, that somebody's at the level to read that kind of book. But when you're in a gathering of friends not everybody has the same level as vocabulary as you. Like, you're talking about technical, but you're talking about just overall in life. I mean, I could say a word like, I hate to say it, but serendipity, and there's some of our listeners who won't even know what that means.
Right.
That is a fun name, and that is pretty simple, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and I kept saying, just simplify things. You're scaring people away. They don't even want to talk to you because they're also very, if they become, what's the word, intimidated to speak to you because they don't feel they have the level of vocabulary as you do. You know,
I'm not
like,
as smart as you. I shouldn't.
right.
I have a very close friend who got his undergrad at an Ivy League school and then got his grad at another Ivy League school. And he likes to impress people with big words. And I tease him about it every once in a while. So when we're just having a friendly conversation, he'll insert words that he knows I have no clue what they mean. No one does, except him and maybe 5 other people on the planet. And, you know, and I'll tell him, I'll say, can you stop for a second? He'll say, why? I say, because I want to take out my phone and look at the dictionary, see if I can figure out what that word means. And then I tell him, not that I really care what you're saying right now, because you're just being a jerk, but speak just plain English. And if he talks about sports or something like that, he's just a common guy. But if you start talking business or law, it's like, I've got to impress. It's what I do.
If you're charging this much an hour, you got to be impressive.
Exactly. And funny thing, that's why attorneys are one of my target audiences, is to help them communicate more effectively, because sometimes they believe just what you said, Roy, that if they're charging $300, $400, $500 an hour or more, that they have to sound that way. It's like, but a lot of the people you're speaking to, no matter how well educated they are, might not be able to connect with what you're saying. And you do have to simplify it. You do have to put it particular ways and address them like human beings.
Yeah. I'd like to go back when you were talking about, you know, you had people were coaching you, and then you were one-on-one. Now, I would think that would be like a stuttering and all would be more like a say a medical condition. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it could be considered a medical. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess it is considered medical. Yes.
Yeah. And so, but you were able to find somebody that helped you overcome that.
Well, I had been overcoming, back in the day, we're talking when I was in elementary school, we're talking the mid 60s. I was sent to be with Miss Hitler, as far as I called her. I was this room that was a little bigger than an audio video closet in an elementary school. And she had a desk there. And I was told to go, 4th grade. They said, go down to room 102. And I went down to room 102 and I knocked on the door. She said, come in. I shut the door. And the first words out of her mouth, she didn't introduce herself. She didn't say anything but stand there and repeat after me. And every Tuesday morning for an hour, I said things like, Slippery Sammy Serpent has 7 silly sisters, over and over and over. And between having a lisp, which it comes out Slippery Sammy Serpent, and then having a stutter on top of it, especially when I was nervous, I was a 9-year-old boy who stood there with tears coming down my face, but again, and she didn't care. You pushed through it, and that's what you did way back when.
Yeah.
And truthfully, as much as I hated it and as much as I may make fun of it now, I think it helped. I'm sure there'd be completely different ways to do it now, but I think that it helped. And as time went on, my stutter, like I said, it'll come back. And I don't necessarily stammer over words, which I will every once in a while. But if I can't get it out the way I want, I just stop. It's called a block. I just stop talking, which really freaks people out, because in the middle of a sentence, you stop talking and they kind of turn their head like the dog who doesn't understand the master. Like, did he complete the sentence? Did I miss something? And I know it's me, but they don't.
Give me some words.
Yeah. So with all that said, it was really, by the time I got probably at high school, everything pretty much subsided. So when I went for help, it was really with communicating on building presentations, developing the presentation itself, how to deliver it using both the voice and the body language and the like, and all that. And the group help was great. And it was well known. It was at Dale Carnegie. But when I went down to New York City and got one-on-one help, it was just at a whole new level. It was tremendous.
Well, I think anybody that has any kind of issue, no matter what it is, especially growing up, they develop a way to compensate for it, no matter what it is.
I believe you're right. I believe you're right. We find a way. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at a lot of things. The Paralympics are coming up soon. You know, these are people who have found a way to get by with what they're dealing with and be tremendous at a sport. So,
Have you ever had someone? I'm assuming when you speak, a lot of times you bring up the fact of when you were growing up and what you overcame. Do you ever have anybody come up after your speech and tell you, "Oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe, I had the same thing," or "This helps me so much because I still have a little bit of this or a little bit of that."
yeah, whether it's stuttering, a lisp, other speech impediment, or any other type of so-called limitation, yeah, you'll have people come up and say that gives me inspiration, or and quite frankly, it's true. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Believe me. And it gives them some of that too. That I've just heard another person who overcame what they dealt with, and now I'm inspired to do the same. That's not what I go out and talk about generally, but when I hear that, and sometimes, like you said, Roy, I might mix that in with what I'm presenting about the benefits of communication, especially if the host or whomever it's organizing asks me to speak a little bit about that. Then, yeah, I get people who come up and talk about that or contact me afterwards, and nothing's better than that.
Yeah, that's almost better than the money, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd almost give the check back.
Yeah.
Almost.
Well, but yeah, but that's what I say. I mean, really, you're making a difference in someone's life.
Yeah, that's one of the things I look at. You can see, if the people who are watching this on video can see that helmet over my shoulder. That was my dad's helmet. Well, one of my dad's helmets. He was a firefighter here in Providence, Rhode Island. And I have that helmet up there, and I have his other helmets as well. But that one you can see is the old metal kind. It's all beat up. The brass is off it that they used to have on there and everything, all the ornamental brass. And that's because a ceiling fell on his head, and that saved his life.
Wow.
And I always remember my dad. He died when I was 30, and he was my greatest friend and my greatest mentor. And I always remember that he helped people in the way he could. And I actually adored him and wanted to become a firefighter too, but he knew that wasn't the profession for me. And today, I can't help people the way my dad did and other people like him do, but I can help them in another way. And I really mean this. And I'm not known as a warm and fuzzy guy by any stretch of the imagination, at least not outwardly. But especially when I'm helping younger people, I will never see the highest level of their success. I'll be long gone before a 25-year-old gets to be 55, or where they might achieve that level of success. But I'll know somewhere along the line, I helped them, even if it was a little bit. And that's a pretty cool feeling. That's a nice way to go to sleep at night.
Oh, heck yeah. Being able to make a difference in someone's life. And like you say, you may never even know it.
Nope.
But just knowing that, what, there's people out here I've helped, and what I've showed them from my experience has changed their lives. I've helped them.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing. I could never be a doctor or a nurse. Thank God there are people like that in the world. That's not me either. So I do it in my own little way. But even if it's for their personal goals, even if they want to buy a house on a lake in Maine or Minnesota, or wherever it might be, down in beautiful Dallas, and they want to buy that home on the lake. Well, maybe if they can become more effective at communicating, then they can enjoy a more successful career. And if they can enjoy that more successful career, then they can do with the things that the money brings. They can do things with that otherwise they might not have been. And that's a pretty cool thing too.
Yeah.
I have a quick question though. With public speaking and with communication, sometimes comes the negative side of it. So if you do not communicate yourself, and sometimes you're up there in public speaking, and then you get what they call today the haters, or the people who will send nasty comments to you or whatever. Do you help them on how to deal with that? Because I understand that it'll give you some confidence, but there's still people out there I know, they're very confident speakers, But when if somebody attacks something they say, that little piece kind of goes down again, that confidence thing. And it's like, I've been attacked.
Yeah, it does. And I tell just about every one of my clients when we get to the point of talking about that, I tell them this little tale about my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother grew up in Maine, and she was a country girl. And she lived to be just shy of 100. So she died when I was 18. And we used to go up there every summer. And so I got to know her. And a lot of people don't get to know their great-grandparents well. And I got to know her pretty well. And when we would have reunions up in Maine, it was my mom's side of the family, there would be hundreds of people, 200, 250, maybe 300 people, because where they were from, there was nothing to do but make more people. So there were all these cousins and aunts and uncles. And at one point, at every single year that we had these, my great-grandmother would take all the great-grandkids, and there would be 15 of us or whatever. And she'd take us aside away from everybody else. And she'd say one thing, just one line, not explain it, turn around and walk away. So one year when I was about 12, she took us all aside and she said, if they look that close, slap their face. And I'm a 12-year-old boy thinking, what does that mean? But she wouldn't explain it. She just turned around and walked away. And if you asked her, she'd say, think about it. And that's all she wanted you to do is think about it. Well, in a couple of years, I started to decide that she was really talking to the girls, and her being this old country girl, saying if the boys get that close, that friendly, whatever, that handsy, slap their face. When I got older, what I took it to mean was if someone criticizes you, I don't mean critiques you, where you ask for help, but criticizes you, then slap their face. Not literally, figuratively, but slap their face. It's not your problem, it's theirs. So I try to instill that. Does that help? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on the case. We can all take that hit that you're talking about, Lorianne, but there has to be some of that in you when you're presenting that. I mean, let's face it, public speaking is not an easy thing to do. And I have no problem. If someone were to outwardly criticize me, I have no problem. I might not say it out loud, but I'd be thinking, you come up and give it a try. Let's see how well you do. But as long as you're prepared, and that's all I tell my clients, if you've prepared your butt off and go out and do the best you can do, if they look that close, slap their face. If you don't prepare and you wing it and you suck,
that's on you.
That's on you.
And you know, I taught in school for a while, and I used to always wonder how the teachers know you weren't paying attention or whatever. But when you're in front of that group of people, you can see exactly who's interested, who's not, who's, you know, out and left. You know, it's very obvious whether you're drawing them in or not.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And there's some of there's the cliches that some of them are true, but some of them we have to take with a grain of salt, like crossing of the arms. Some people might just be comfortable that way, but more than likely, and this is what I try to do, if I have a lot of people who are in the audience with their arms crossed, I take a mental check of the temperature in the room. If it's cool, that's why their arms are crossed. Unfortunately, if it's not cool in the room and everybody has their arms crossed, I got to think of where I lost them and how I'm getting them back.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't please everybody. And that's another thing people have to know is you just can't please everybody. Unfortunately, there are two people we will look at over and over and over again, and neither one really helps us. One is the person we just fell in love with. We said something, they smiled and nodded their head. We're like, yes, yes, I just fell in love with this guy. I am going to look at him for the rest of my talk. And that's unfortunate because now you're ignoring everybody else. The other is the person you're referring to, Roy, who might now have taken out their phone or whatever they're doing, that you know you've lost them. You absolutely know it. And that becomes like the tooth that hurts, that you keep going, yep, still hurts. Half hour, yep, still hurt. And you just keep looking at that person and you're doing yourself no good because, yep, she's still not paying attention. Look, 3 minutes, nope, still not paying attention. And we do that over and over again.
And some people, no matter what you say, they're not going to pay attention.
No. The best thing is you have to understand, for the most part, because we don't know what everybody's going through. Some people might have other things on their mind where they just can't pay attention. Some people may have heard someone just like you come to talk about the very same thing and it was horrible and they're just not going to give you the time of day. That's fine. But for the most part, people want someone speaking to succeed, even if it's for self-preservation. Let's say you're in college and it's the first day of a new semester and you go to class. No one walks into that room and says, I hope this professor sucks. I want to be bored for the next 3 months. Yeah. No, you're hoping that that professor is entertaining, insightful, knows how to communicate and bring out the best in you. That's what you're hoping for. So most people want a public speaker, whether they're speaking for a minute or an hour, to do well. They're on your side. The problem is, if you don't prep, well, then you might lose them, and that's the long road to hoe, even if it's only a few minutes.
And attenuations matter a lot. I mean, I know there's some speakers and they have great messages, but when they're talking like this, and I just want to tell you that it's like, and my greatest teachers, you know, they were live, and their movements and their gestures, and it made a difference. And sometimes they were talking about things that were not all that interesting that became interesting because they thought it was. It was like,
yeah, they knew how to engage. They knew how to engage you. And
yeah,
public speaking, as I see it, is a three-legged stool. It's the message, the voice, and the body language. And you drop any one of those, and the message itself takes a hit. Now, it might not destroy it. You might have terrible body language, but your voice and the message itself can carry it through. It just wouldn't have been as good as it could have been otherwise. And body language is huge because body language speaks to the unconscious. And we make a lot of judgments with the unconscious brain. A lot of judgments.
Really like that. Good point.
Peter, how can our listeners reach out to you?
Best way is to go to the website, which is petergeorgepublicspeaking.com. Okay. That's it. And if they go, they'll see a down at the bottom, or there'll be a pop-up as well, where they can sign up for more than 50 free public speaking tips. Comes to them as a PDF. They can download those. And if they want to get in touch with me after that, they can go right on my calendar and schedule a free consultation. Or if they just want to talk and have a question, I'm good for that too. They don't have to call to hire me or to see about hiring me. If they have a specific question, give me a call. I'll try to help you out.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate this. I know it's a very important subject to a lot of people, a lot of our listeners out there, because a lot of them are authors and entrepreneurs, and particularly authors. I think that this is going to be very good for them because, you know, there's quite a few authors that like to write, but they don't like to speak.
Yes. That's one of the groups I work with is authors, just for that reason. And unfortunately, many of us believe if you can write a book, well, therefore you can speak. And a lot of the writers know that's not true, but a lot of organizers of events bring in writers and then set them up for failure.
Yeah. Thank you. Perfect.
Well, thanks a lot for being with us, Peter. I really enjoyed it. It was really a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
It has been. Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit us at lifterstory.com.